Alright guys, today we're going to be doing a bit of an upgrade to my computer here. Main point of this upgrade is to add in another hard drive as well as a little bit more RAM. Also in another video I'm going to be redoing all the cable management in this, well, for the entire setup here. Also, I'm actually going to be pretty much taking that entire computer apart and redoing the cable management that's inside the computer. So anyway, first off I'm going to take this out of here. I'll blow the dust out of it, and then we'll bring it back in here, start tearing it apart, and then eventually well, I'll put it back together, I suppose. Alright, so this is the computer as it is now. This has an i7-4790K in it, which is overclocked to 4.4 gigahertz, which is technically just the turbo boost frequency, but I just have it running at 4.4 constantly. It has a GTX 970. It's an SSC edition from EVGA, which is super clocked or whatever. And it's got an ACX 2.0 Plus cooler on it. Western Digital Green 3TB hard drive, which is what I've been doing all my video editing off of, as well as the main storage drive. Samsung 850 EVO, that's the main boot operating, well, the operating system drive, and all the programs and stuff are stored on that drive. 650 watt power supply and 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do today. You can see part of it kind of hanging out over here. I'm going to put in another 16 gigs of RAM since I'm only using 2 out of the 4 slots. So this is the exact same kit that I have in there now. 16 gigs, same timings and everything like that. Same frequency, same timings. So it should pretty much just be a drop-in, sort of not a replacement, but it'll be a drop-in kit there. And I also have this HGST hard drive I'm going to put in here. Now this is also a 3TB drive, 7200 RPM. And this is technically a NAS hard drive, but from the reviews on Amazon, a lot of people are using these just on desktops. But as a NAS drive, this is kind of the minimum that you can get away with 24/7 operation, as well as it should be a little bit better for vibration resistance having multiple drives in one cage, which I am going to have. Main plan here is to have this as my actual video editing drive and everything off of that. Then that WD Green drive will be the a backup hard drive. So I'll set up Windows Automatic Backup to use that drive, and we'll just use this as the actual video editing drive. And the main reason why I want to replace that Western Digital drive is because, as some of you probably already know, these things have a timeout on them that the heads park after, I think it's like 6 seconds or something ridiculously low. So the load-unload cycle count on that hard drive is all the way up at like 53,000 or something like that already. Computer's less than a year old, and they're rated for about 300,000, which sounds like a lot until you realize it's already at that 53 or 54,000. But also, it's not the fastest hard drive ever because it's meant for energy savings more than anything. And the last thing that I want to do to this computer is redo all the cable management, and I also want to flip that power supply around the right way. So anyway, we'll take this panel off and you'll see the inside of it. And somehow I've managed to actually scratch up this side panel pretty good here. I'm not entirely sure how I did that because it's, you know, the plastic side panel apparently is quite fragile, because I never really tried to clean this with anything. I might have tried to do it with like a microfiber cloth or something like that once, but other than that, I never really tried to clean it. It's kind of scratched up. But anyhow, I'll set that off to the side, and we can take a look at the inside of this thing. And it's not too horrible, but there's a random fan cable laying around here. That might actually have to stay there too, because I don't think I have any good place to route that. I'll have to turn this around on the other side and see what I have for cable management. But also, this 8-pin connector from the power supply runs kind of up along the back side of this and then over to the 8-pin connector, which is over here. But I think there's actually a hole in this case that I can run that cable through, but I will have to take the entire motherboard out, but that's alright. Actually, let's just go ahead and spin this around. And I know this is going to be horrible. There's a reason why I haven't taken this off since the computer's been built. Basically, all the cables are shoved in here so we can get the thing shut. But we'll see how bad this is. Alright, so pretty jumbled mess of cables, as I was pretty much expecting. But anyway, there is a cable management hole over here. That's what I want to run that 8-pin power cable through, so I'm going to flip that power supply over and do that. I've got a couple of, I guess there's a couple points where I could tie in zip ties here. I might try to figure out a better place to run this fan cable too, and also try to, I don't know what I can do with the SATA cables here or anything like that, but well, we'll just see what I can do with this thing. Anyway, I'm going to start taking it apart. I'll try to find a good spot for the camera, and I'll start taking everything out of this. And also, I should mention one other complaint that I really don't like about this computer is the cooler on it. Doesn't seem to do that good of a job. It's a pretty big cooler, the Arctic Freezer 13CO. It's rated to handle like 200 watts or something like that. But with my very modest overclock on the 4790K here, the thing actually does get up to about 88 or 89 degrees at a peak. That's not sustained operation, is about 86 degrees, so it runs hot. I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, it's been doing that for a year. I actually have the chip undervolted a little bit too from the factory settings in the BIOS. It's running at 1.225 volts, which I don't really know how good that is for an i7 like this, but it really doesn't seem to make very good contact or something, because this is one of the scenarios where as soon as you put a load on the CPU, the temperature spikes way up. It doesn't, you know, normally it would take some time to heat the heatsink up, but well, that's what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to take some time to heat the heatsink up, and it's not doing that. It's just going straight up, so probably an issue with thermal contact. This has got the sort of push pin mounting system like the stock cooler does, so that might be part of the reason. But I'm going to see where I can put this camera, and I'll start taking stuff apart and see what we can get. But anyway, let's get to it. Didn't take too long at all to turn this into a empty shell. So anyway, let's go ahead and pull the hard drive and the RAM out of the box. Won't be too exciting, but put it on film anyway. Alright, so let's see what's inside this hard drive box. I don't think there's any SATA cables or anything, but this is actually a retail box. Well, they actually gave us two different types of screws, it looks like. Internal drive kit, limited warranty. Information packet. Drive itself. Pretty heavy. What's this? Turbo cloud backup. You get an entire 3 gigabytes. 3, okay. 3 gigs for free. That's a heck of a deal, ain't it? Anyway. Let's see here. This is actually sealed. Moisture barrier bag, so yeah, it makes sense it's sealed. Cut into that. I guess I could have just ripped it open, but inside this bag is a hard drive. Yeah, pretty standard. I don't know what I was expecting, but yeah, it's a hard drive. 3 terabytes, probably says in the front of this. Yep, 3 terabyte capacity, warranty void, whatever. Advanced format, that probably means, you know, it's a 4K sector. And if I remember right, the way you mount drives into these little trays is actually pretty easy. But this particular case is just kind of, you line them up the right way first, and then the cage just, or the tray rather, just kind of slips over it like that. And then you have a reasonably securely mounted drive. So for actually putting these drives back in here, I'm going to do this a little bit differently this time. I'm going to put the 850 EVO back up on top here. Some more dust on top of that thing, should wipe off there. But the 850 EVO, it's a 250 gig one if I didn't mention that before. That's going to go right there. The Western Digital Green drive is going to go on the way bottom, and then the Hitachi drive is going to go on top of the Western Digital drive. That's how I'm going to set this up. So, anyway, that'll go right there. This will go on top of it. And there we go. The drives are right back into position here. You don't actually need the screws. I think you can, if you want to, you can put the screws in on the bottom of these things. If you wanted to, yeah. Some of the screw holes do line up if you want to put screws in there. You don't really have to. So, I'm not going to bother with it. And the instructions for the case tell you that you don't have to. Actually, the instructions for the case don't even tell you to put screws in there at all, I don't think. So, anyway, I'm going to put the case to the side for now, and I'm going to go get the motherboard box, and I'm going to, because I have to get another SATA cable out anyway. If I don't have a magnet stuck to the case on the other side, I can move it. I probably took more stuff out of this case than I really needed to. Like the power cables. I'm going to have to put these back in anyway, but that's alright because I want to redo the cable management anyhow. So, I'm going to go grab the motherboard box, grab another SATA cable out of it. I'll go ahead and take this thing right now, and I'm going to put the RAM into it. Now, my plan with this RAM is actually to put the 2 sticks that I already have in the slots that are the same channel. So I'm going to take this one out and put it in, well, I'll just put this one over here. Well, I think the best way to do this would probably be to go and get those other 2 sticks first and put those in so I have more room. So here's our brand new RAM kit. Installing RAM is pretty simple. You just line up the notch, of course, and stick it in here. Put these 2 in on the first 2 slots next to the CPU cooler. Looks like I'll be able to get those in there without taking that off, so that's nice. Should click in. And we'll take the other brand new module and stick it in the same channel, essentially, is what this is, since this is a dual channel board. The 2 slots, first 2 slots next to the CPU socket will be one of the channels, and then the second 2 slots will be the other channel. So this will actually be running dual channel mode, and as I said, these are the exact same specifications on all these RAM modules, so they should work just fine. So anyway, there's the entire 32 gigs of RAM put in there. Alright, so I don't really have to do anything else with this thing. I just gotta go grab a SATA cable. I'm not even gonna see if it recognizes the RAM yet, because you can still get to this pretty easily on the inside of the case, so I'm not too concerned whether it recognizes that or not. You may have to go into the BIOS and clear the CMOS, but theoretically it should detect the fact that there's more RAM in it and automatically. So this is the motherboard box. Been kind of sitting around for the last year, but we'll open this up, and buried in here somewhere will be SATA cables. So that's all the power supply stuff. So underneath this should be SATA cables, probably. Empty bag for the motherboard. Hardware, SATA cable. Right here. So this motherboard actually came with some fairly nice braided SATA cables, which I've never seen anywhere else. So anyway, this has like the SLI bridge and stuff like that in it too. And these were the two PCI Express blanks that I don't need anymore because I have that graphics card in there, but I'll save them in case I ever take it out. So that's what I need out of that. So we're ready to start putting this back together already. But anyway, I'll go ahead and move the camera back to where it was. I had to take this fan out to get to one of the screws on the motherboard, unfortunately. So these are just really cheap PWM fans, the Arctic F12s. These are like $6 or something, but they're reasonably quiet. They move a lot of air. Bearings haven't gone bad yet, so I'd say they weren't good enough. Alright, so this is the system put back together. I don't have nearly as many cables running around random places on this part of the computer, like on the inside that you can see from the window. Basically everything's been moved to the back panel here, and you might have seen me fighting the panel there trying to get it back on, which is probably a sign that I'm doing cable management wrong, but it's back together now. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Anyhow, this power supply is put on here the right way around, which would be fan toward the bottom side. In this case, does have a filter down here. If I can pull that out, kind of helps to lift that up. So, filter for the fan on the power supply, and you'll notice I put these feet on here, and I 3D printed these. I'll link into it. Put a card, like, you know, it pops up like right over here somewhere. But anyway. I 3D printed those, and I have that on YouTube as well. And that is because this computer sits on carpet. It's you need to be able to get airflow into the power supply if you're going to put it fan side down like that. Unfortunately, these feet are a little bit big, and it's kind of hard to get that filter on and off of there with them in the way. But it will go, probably. But just like that. So anyway, that will help. It evens the load out on the carpet as well as raises these up, or raises it up by about an inch, and it's enough to get my hand under here even when it's on the carpet. So should be plenty of airflow for this power supply here. Other than that, I probably could have gotten this PCI Express power cable back into the power supply, or back into the back panel a little bit further. We've got all the RAM installed, of course, and well, that's about it really. 2 hard drives here. It's kind of a pain hooking up these as well, just because of where they're at in the case. It's hard to get a SATA cable and power cable into them, but it's all hooked up in there. We'll see here. I'll get into the BIOS and make sure everything's recognized first, and then we'll boot into Windows and format the drive and that kind of stuff. So go ahead and get this side panel with the window back on here as long as I can, and this doesn't hit it. Should be alright. These side panels don't actually go on here all that easy. Even when you don't have a bunch of cables in the way, they're kind of hard to line up and get it so that every single one of the tabs goes in. It's kind of a pain. Alright, so there it is. It's put back down in there. Hopefully I have like the power LED and the hard drive activity LED set up right. And the power and reset switches themselves. So anyhow, I haven't tried to turn it on yet. We'll see what happens though. I'll point this at the screen. And of course we're going to hit delete and try and get into the BIOS here. So see what happens. It might explode. I don't know. I wasn't wearing any kind of anti-static wrist strap or anything, so hopefully it's something. Hit the delete key 1,000 times. It should go into the BIOS. It's taking its time. There we go. I think it's F9 is system info. Look at that. We do have 32 gigs of RAM is detected. Everything else is the same. Let's see what we have in memory. Channel A, timing mode. Yep, that's fine. Though it should have like XMP on it, I thought. Yeah, it does. Profile 1. Alright, so other than that, everything's okay. Save and exit. Let's see, it should boot up just fine. I do have that SSD on a different SATA port though, I think. It'd be kind of nice if this light right here wasn't on. There we go. No HDMI signal, always does that. Kind of a pain in the butt. Because I have to manually hit a button on the monitor every time I need to get it to go here. So, well, looks like it still works. We're going to do some things in the disk manager here. Wherever that's at, disk management. Oops, there it is. You must initialize the disk. Alright, I'm going to hit cancel on that for now because I want to change some stuff first. This one, I want to change the letter. Change. I want this one to have E, and then I'm going to put this one as D. So that'll be okay. Yep, it's fine. The volume, video archive D, simple volume is currently in use. If you continue, I know it's doing that actually, I think. Oh, no, it did change it. Never mind. It did change. Alright, video archive is now drive E, so I should be able to set this drive. Oops, I gotta initialize it. I probably have to open this and open it and close it again. Alright, so I got this set up the way that I want it now. With this video archive drive being E, and I'm probably going to change it over so it says like backup or something, but you must initialize the disk. Of course, we have to do that. GPT files, file system, and of course, you have a 2.2 terabyte limit with MBR, so you're kind of forced to use GPT on a 3 terabyte drive, but say okay, and now we've got unallocated space here, and we can do new simple volume on it, basically just hitting next a whole bunch of times. D, that's fine. Format that, and this is where we put in the name, and we'll call it, I just want to replace the video archive. I might just call this archive, actually. Alright, so quick format, that's okay. Next, and finish. Might take a second to format it, then there we go. It should just pop up right there. So now what we're going to do, we'll open this up in a new window. And we're just going to completely take all of these and move them onto this drive. 297 gigabytes. Estimated time about an hour. Let's open up Task Manager and see, because one of these drives should theoretically be at 100%. Yep, drive E, which is the old drive. And of course, right now, on the 7200 RPM drive that we just installed there, the HGST one, we're going to be on the very outside part of the platters, which means that that drive right now is going to be really fast. By the time we put 300 gigabytes on it, it's probably only going to be slightly faster than this drive, but we are going to test it. Anyhow, you can see this is the new drive, this is the old drive. The old drive is just maxed out at 100% active time. This other one just kind of bouncing around here. So, anyhow, looks like my hard drive activity LED is on, the power light's on. I don't really need to test and see if the reset switch works, because it probably does. And I'll figure out soon enough if the USB ports work, but I'm sure those are fine. So, anyhow, that should be just fine. Alright, so here we are, about an hour or so later. All my files have been copied from archive to, or from video archive to archive. This is the old drive. And I'm going to format this drive eventually, but first, before I do that, I'm going to come in here and do a bit of benchmarking on this. So I'll go ahead and refresh all the drive information, and this will pop back to the Samsung drive probably. And first off, I just want to kind of show some of the smart statistics on this as well. You see the power on hours of my computer, 2520, so 2520 power on hours. Power on count is in there as well. And the SSD health overall looks pretty good. This is the hard drive here, the Western Digital Green hard drive that was in this computer before. And this is why that number right there was the concerning one to me, given that that's already at given that's already at 53,624 and it's rated at 300,000. It's already starting to tick up there. I mean, it's still probably about 6 years of life before it hits that 300,000. But also, it's not a bad idea to have a backup hard drive in case one fails anyway. But really, there's no errors in this anywhere. No reallocation or anything like that. Write error and read error, that kind of stuff. It's all good. And then the last hard drive, this is the one that we just put in there. So this isn't going to have a whole lot of information here. Pretty much everything's 0 except for the stop start count. Power on hours 1. Temperature is at over 1,000,000 degrees. Okay, I think that's off. But I also wanted to show you that these hard drives are actually getting kind of hot. So I'm going to move the fan in front of the case, or the fan that's on the front of the case, down. Because you can see here our Hitachi drive that we just put in is up at 44 degrees C. The Western Digital one is currently at 40. It got up to 41. And even the SSD up here got up to 40 degrees. So anyway, we're going to move that fan so it's blowing air across the hard drives. But what we really want to know here is benchmark. So we'll just start out with the SSD. Just for the fun of it, because I haven't ran this benchmark in a while. And I'll have to probably stop the recording when it comes to recording on the hard drives. Because right now I'm not accessing the SSD, but I am accessing the E drive when I'm recording this. So, alright, so I went ahead and I reran that test anyway with the screen recording software off. But you'll see sequential read speed is actually higher than its rated speed according to this software. And I used to actually get the write speed all the way up there at 520 or so too. So maybe moving it to that other port actually did make a little bit of a difference, but I mean, it's still 454 megabytes a second. I don't think it's going to make any real difference, especially since that's sequential, and I'm never going to really use that sequential read and write. But we'll go ahead and run a performance test on this as well, and we'll see what we get. Alright, so here are the results on the Western Digital Green hard drive. You see the sequential read is 66, which is curiously only about half of the sequential write speed. Sequential write was 123, the read was 66. So of course the random aren't very good because it's a hard drive. And we'll see if this new drive, see if there's any difference in this new drive. Alright, so actually it's a pretty big difference between the drives here. We've got a decent bit more than twice the sequential read speed and a little bit more on the write speed there. I think the random read is actually quite a bit bigger than what, or better than what we had on the WD drive before. Oh yeah, random read's a lot better on that 7200 RPM drive. Random write's actually quite a lot better on this thing too. So anyway, quite a big performance difference there. We can look up and see about the defragment. When the last time these were defragmented. Okay, solid state drive, that's never been run. So it wasn't too long ago. Actually, what day is today? 25th? 25th. Yeah, so that was actually just run today at 8 o'clock in the morning, apparently. 0% fragmented, so no problem there. But anyway, that looks good. Alright, so I've decided I'm going to go ahead and put RGB LED strip on this anyway, even though I decided not to earlier. But anyway, the plan here is I'm going to put the Molex connector on here in order to get power from the computer, and I'm going to use this little adapter that the computer came with, which I think is actually for floppy drives, but the reason why it's so good for my application here is because it takes a standard 0.1 inch pitch pin header, so I can just plug that in right there and use that for power. You gotta be careful which way I hook this around though, because if I put it in here backward, technically it won't do anything too spectacular. It'll just give this 5 volts instead of 12 volts, which won't actually hurt anything, I don't think. It just won't work. The pin out of these things, I've got this side marked silver because that's the 12 volt line. The 2 center pins are ground, and then this last pin is 5 volts. So anyway, that's how that's set up. I'm going to use this little Bluetooth LED controller, which I covered in another video. And I've just got a strip of 50/50 RGB LEDs, and these are the waterproof type, that doesn't really matter. With the side panel, I'm just going to, and yes, I'm just going to stick them straight onto the side panel here. I'm not going to put them inside the computer. I'm just going to put them like in this area here where it's recessed. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on that. I'll move the camera somewhere again, and well, we'll get to work. Alright, so if I put them right there, that shouldn't interfere with anything with the case. Actually should work out quite nicely, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and connect all these strips together. I'm just going to take some thin white solid core wire and basically just connect these end to end, and I'm just going to solder it together. I also do have connectors so that I can disconnect the side panel from the rest of the computer, of course, but so anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and grab some wire, get the soldering iron warmed up here, and I'll probably just take these off of here, get an idea how long the wire pieces need to be, and see what we can do with it. this actually turned out a lot better than I was expecting, really. I'm not entirely sure how well this is going to show up on camera, but the LEDs are installed here, and I've shown this controller in a previous video, but it's basically it's Bluetooth, and you can control it with your phone. So you got quite the range of colors you can do. You can also do different preset functions, and you can dim the color as well. You can dim the lights there, brightness control, and you can have presets. So I've got red, green, blue, and what sort of kind of looks like white. If I put this right in the center, you get that sort of cold blue white, which actually doesn't look too bad at all. It's like a sort of ice white, which is kind of neat. But anyway, you can have functions here. There's some preset ones. There's this 7-color crossfade, and some other different stuff in here. It's all over the place. But you can also set custom ones, and I quite like this one, which is reasonably simple here. It's just an RGB fade, so it'll start on red, and it will just continue to fade through all the other colors. Back down to red, so we'll just keep doing that over and over in a loop. So anyway, the last thing to do with this is just set up the software. One thing I might do eventually, because I do have this red LED fan here, I might make another video of this in the future, changing this red LED fan over to RGB, as well as taking the lights out of this little piece on the case and making that RGB as well, so the fan and that little bar of light follow whatever the inside of the computer's doing. And one other thing that I should mention here is that I'm going to be redoing all this cable management here really shortly. I'll be in another video doing that, but I am going to redo the cable management. And also, I'd kind of like to replace my keyboard and mouse here. These are the Cooler Master CM Storm keyboard and mouse, which aren't too bad, but when it comes down to it, the red isn't something that I really liked that much from day one, because really red and black has been overdone so much. I'd like to have a Cherry MX blue switched keyboard and RGB lighting on it. I like to have some type of backlight to be able to see it. Unfortunately, my preference for RGB is really expensive, or the preference for white, because that's a pretty neutral color, also really expensive. And one thing that I do not like about this mouse is the fact that there's no way to turn the LEDs off in this. And the motherboard that's in this computer, it powers the USB ports through the 5-volt standby rail, which means this thing stays on all the time. All the lights in this stay on constantly. So this mouse ends up acting like a nightlight. But anyway, computer actually looks fairly good. I was actually pretty happy with the results of the RGB anyway. Kind of surprised how good it actually looks. And if you really went in here and you looked around, you can see those white and black twisted cables up in there, but you're not going to be able to see those from a normal viewing spot on this. But anyway, that looks really good. Another video, I'll put the same controller on some RGB strips around the outside of the desk here, so that should be interesting. But let's go ahead and set up Windows Backup, and well, that'll be about it for this video.
Alright, so on the software side of things, we're going to go ahead and open up Disk Manager again, and I'm just going to completely reformat that WD Green drive, which is the one right on top. Video archive, we're going to format the thing. We're going to format it as backup. Backup NTFS, that's fine. Allocation size is default, which will probably be 4K. Quick format, and that's all good there. I don't care. And I do have another backup copy right now on an external hard drive in case something goes wrong during this process. Like the new hard drive fails. Volume simple is currently in use. To force the format of this volume, click yes. Okay, that's fine. But I do have another hard drive here that has all my data on it. If this thing happens to die as it's doing a backup to the WD Green drive, and let's see here, this PC, and yep, 2.72 terabytes free to 2.72, so that is indeed reformatted. So we'll go in here and look up backup, and there should be something inside of Windows settings here, theoretically, I don't know. Automatically backup files. Turn that on. Maybe. What if I want more options? Maybe it'll freeze up. I don't know. I want to back up every day probably, and then until space is needed. That's fine. I already did set this up once, and it's set. These are the folders that it will back up. These uncut pictures. Probably go, and since I have the you'll need to stop using your current backup drive, so I added a new one. Okay, maybe the whole thing will just crash, I don't know. Alright, so I set this up here with the backup, so it's backup using file history, which is fine. We can add a drive. It's going to search for drives. And I want to use why does it not show up? Alright, so as usual, things are more complicated than you would think they would be. I actually had to go into Disk Manager, delete this volume, and then create a new simple volume on it like I did before. But it is actually popping up as backup in here now, so automatically backup files is on. We have more options in here. So there's a lot of stuff that I don't really need. OneDrive, desktop, 3D objects, blah, 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 blah. I definitely don't need this. Can I delete it? I wonder. Remove, yep. I don't know what this is. That's like Java or something. I don't know. Alright, so I'm going to have to add some folders to this. So we're going to add, we'll start down here at Videos Uncut. Videos. I wonder if I can just back that whole hard drive up. Probably not. Temp. A temporary folder is not a part of the file system in Windows. That's actually something that I use in my video production workflow. So I already get pictures. I'm pretty sure I did. Music. Add a folder and downloads. Downloads, music, pictures, RPI images, temp, videos, videos uncut. So that's all the folders that I really need, and I'm not going to mess with this too much. Not too concerned about it. And I'm going to change this stuff. We're going to save the backup until space is needed. And we'll back it up every day. Probably. That's as much as I'm going to need. And we're going to click on backup now and see what happens. And, well, apparently that disappears is what happens, but we can still see what's going on. Well, presumably we can still see what's going on here. Yep, we can. Looks like it. So that's being written to quite heavily. And let's just take another look at the smart data that we have from our Hitachi drive that we just put in. I was curious about load unload cycle count is on 4, and I think our power on count is also on 4, so that's exactly what I wanted, a drive that's not going to be continuously bouncing the heads or parking the heads. So anyway, that looks like it's going to go just fine there. We're basically writing all the data from this disk onto this disk, so that's it for the software setup side of things. I don't know why the clock speeds was bouncing around there. That's kind of weird. I might have to go and screw around with the BIOS again trying to get that clock speed. I don't know why it does that. Every once in a while I get it where the thing doesn't run at 4.4 constantly. It just starts running on turbo boost. So I don't know what the deal with that is, but I'll have to fix that. But anyhow, hope you enjoyed this video of my video editing machine upgrade. Anyway, that's it for now, guys. Bye.